This is a special podcast presentation from 700WLW.com. This is Doc Thompson On Demand.
Doc Thompson on the big one, 700 WLW. My guest is Dick Patton. He's the president of the American Family Business Institute. Dick, God forbid you were to die. Imagine that for a moment, though, and I show up at your house the moment you die, and I take a bunch of your stuff. Many people would call that theft, but if I work for the government, somehow they think it's not only acceptable, but a good idea.
Isn't that amazing? You know, this is a situation where I think we have to ask ourselves, do we actually have property rights, or are we merely tax-paying serfs that after a lifetime of hard work and saving and gathering, that when our heart stops beating, somehow the government can come in and lay claim to that which we created with our lives, instead of us being able to pass it on to our kids, our heirs, or whoever we choose to.
And we're talking about the estate tax or the death tax. And that's essentially what happens. You have a situation where the government, when you die, certainly the federal government, states have it as well, where they say simply because you have died, they have some claim that they can stake in what you have already earned. And here's the important part, Dick, stuff that you have already paid taxes on multiple times over.
You know, you hit the nail right on the head. After a lifetime of paying all of those taxes, they somehow want to come in and then claim the property that you have gathered. Essentially, you exchanged, the time and the work of your life together. And whether it's in the form of a family farm or a family business, or you have just been frugal and have saved and gathered and carefully managed your investments, the government is not entitled to this when you die.
It is immoral and it is theft. Plain and simple. A death tax or an estate tax is immoral or theft.
That's absolutely right. And but to take a look at it from a slightly different perspective, just from a very practical perspective, let's say in Ohio, 57% of all the jobs in Ohio come from from Ohio's family business owners, family businesses. And when the government wants to come in and confiscate up to or even more than half of your capital each and every generation, all this does is destroys the prospect of future growth of family jobs and even lowers everybody else's wages.
All right, I want to dive into the estate tax in Ohio and the tri-state in a minute. I want to run down what the federal numbers are, because this is something that came up at the end of end of last year when they were doing the deal in Congress. Last year was the first time in decades that there was no estate tax, and
Absolutely.
there were some people that had the good sense, like George Steinbrenner, to die last year, so his family didn't have to pay money on it. It was supposed to this year, if they hadn't fixed it, go. The first $1 million would be exempt, and they did a deal where now the first $5 million at the federal level is exempt, but you get nailed for $35 on top of it. What is it in Ohio?
In Ohio, they add an additional 18% in the top category. And so what you've got is essentially 35% plus 18% is the top category of death taxes if you have the misfortune of dying in Ohio.
53% if you're at the top levels.
That's correct. And there actually are 21 states that have state-specific death tax. All of the rest of the states have no death taxes.
Can I take a guess? Are some of those states very blue states?
They are very blue states, and interestingly enough, all of the states that get lots of sunshine have no death taxes. All of the states that do have death taxes are up in the colder tiers and are enduring more chilly winters. But interestingly enough, of all of those states, we actually, from IRS data, are able to measure who is moving because of death taxes and where are they going.
Real quick, does Kentucky and Indiana, do they have any type of death tax or estate tax at this point?
Kentucky has no death tax. Indiana does, but they have legislation in their legislature to repeal it, just like we're looking at here in Ohio.
What would a repeal of a death tax in Indiana and also Ohio do for business?
Well, what it would do for business is, first of all, it would stop confiscating a big chunk of their capital each and every generation. In Ohio, of course, you've got a long and proud tradition of a manufacturing industry that, of course, has been withering and dying and going away. These industries were founded by families in a large part. And one of the problems is that when the government comes in and says, okay, Dad dies, you owe us, let's say state and federal government combined 50% of what we say you owe, and they walk in and start looking at the equipment and the machinery and the machine tools and say, okay, this is worth that, that's worth that, that's worth that, here's the cost of the building, and here's your tax bill, and you have 9 months to produce the cash. What do you do? And so many destructive things happen. They get sold off under fire sale conditions. They get parted out. They get stripped down and shipped to other countries. But it does nothing for the taxpayers of the state and particularly the job holders of the state. And when you are looking at wanting to preserve family businesses and preserve the jobs that they bring, the death tax is not what you want. Death tax drives that capital out of your state, and it drives it to other states that are far, far, far more friendly.
So you've got to sit down. People, the critics of what we're saying, the people who are like the idea of huge death tax, or that they say, well, the rich people just continue to funnel their money. But as I said, it's immoral. It's their money. They should be able to do what they want, keep it, give it to their kids, or light it on fire in the backyard if they want to. But you've got that other situation here that I don't think they're realizing. You lay out this scenario of a family business. Now imagine parents, husband and wife have worked for years to create a business, and they pass it on to their kids and they retire. And the kids, not even getting rich, just making a nice living every year, but providing a service and providing jobs, and the business is in the black. It's doing well. It is sustainable. Everything is good. They die and pass that on to the kids. They rate the value of that company and say, you've got to come up with the money to pay this death tax. And essentially, those kids may have to end up selling that business, even though there are jobs and it is profitable and it's in the black, but they're not getting rich.
That is exactly right, and it may put them out of business, or may have put them so deeply into debt that they're unable to grow any longer. You mentioned George Steinbrenner. Curiously enough, when he passed away, and as you mentioned, he died. He had the good judgment to die last year when there was no death tax. But actually, my executive assistant's grandfather was his best friend, and so we took that opportunity to take a look at the estate and the Yankees and what does all of this mean. George Steinbrenner at the time owned 85% of the New York Yankees. And so we looked at the capitalization of the team. We looked at his 85%. We looked at what a 55% death tax would have done to the Yankees. And we realized all of a sudden it would have made the capitalization of the Yankees, it would have reduced it so that it was equal to the capitalization of the Mets. And wow. You may or may not be a Yankees fan, but what this is a mega example of how the death tax diminishes every family business each generation.
Is this simply the people who favor a death tax? Is this just simply them saying, we don't think some people ought to have all that money when they die and be able to leave it to kids?
It is, one of the things that because we fight this battle up here on the Hill in Congress as well all the time, and you've got this thing called the Progressive Caucus, and these are House members and senators who believe with a religious-like conviction that it is government's job to redistribute property. And this is one of the things we're up against. They don't even stop, and they won't entertain a common sense argument. They won't talk about jobs. They talk about justice. They talk about economic democracy. They talk about fairness. And really what they're talking about is their worldview of they believe it is government's job to take from them and give to them. And really what this is the core of this battle is a battle of these two opposing worldviews with a belief of property rights and a free enterprise system on one side and a socialistic view of government's role on the other.
No, I was going to say, if people believe that you are simply fanning some rhetoric or whatever, let me back up what you said and show an example of how it is the difference between people believing in individual property, individual rights, and individual responsibility versus people who want some utopian view of the world that can never happen or will not be sustainable. Let me give you an example. In this scenario that we've laid out, they argue that we have to go ahead and take some of what you have because that needs to go back into the fold, into the public good, paying for other people, redistribute it, whatever. Meanwhile, they have no problem with people being able to administer land and property restrictions upon their death when they give it to somebody that can never go away.
Yeah.
You could take a piece of property and mandate that it never be developed or whatever your crackpot view of the world is, and it will stay there forever, essentially being like government land that no one will ever be able to develop. They have no problem with that, so it's always moving in one direction for them.
No, that's exactly right, and so that's why while the death tax is a very practical thing, I mean we look at our own families, we look at our own family farms, we look at our own family businesses, and we say, as you said, this is unfair, it's immoral, and it's just plain wrong. We can look at the jobs implications, and in a jobs-hungry America and a jobs-hungry Ohio, and say, if there's one thing that we can do that is going to make more jobs, and let me give you an example, by the way. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, the former director of the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, said that if we got rid of the death tax, it would add 1.5 million jobs to the American economy. Or to bring it a little bit closer to home, it would add 58,000 jobs to Ohio. This is a very practical thing. And so, yes, it is unfair. Yes, it occurs at a terrible time for a family to confiscate, let's say half of their property. But yes, it also means jobs. And yes, it means higher wages. And yes, it means a more productive America as well. And it really kind of revolves around, do we believe that there is and should be an American dream, or should that be taken away?
So we've got number one, when you talk state tax and death tax, you've got it's immoral, it's theft, and it's wrong, without question. Number two, it is impractical and not good for government or society, and it's not good for the people that's being hit by it. Boy, it's a good thing these things are in play, huh?
It's fascinating. Actually, Steve Enton, who is former Assistant Secretary of Treasury under Ronald Reagan, did an analysis of the death tax, and he showed very conclusively, because of it is so destructive in the GDP and in the economy, that for every $1 of death taxes the government collects, it actually ends up losing $2. So it's not even a legitimate source of revenue.
That's incredible. Talking with AFBI President Dick Patton. AFBI is the American Family Business Institute. I appreciate you joining and sharing info with me today.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. And if there's anybody who would like to, look at more information or is asking, what can I do? If you go to our website, nodeathtax.org, we have an online petition to Congress that you can sign. There's more information on the death tax there than exists any other place on the planet. And actually, if I can just give you this one parting word. No taxation without respiration.
Nice, nicely done. And I have a link to your site at 700WLW.com. Thank you so much. If you are planning on dying anytime soon and you actually want to leave your money to your children or charity or anywhere else, the money that you've earned and already paid tax on many times over, have the good sense to die in Kentucky. Fox 19 Storm Tracker forecast for meteorologist Frank Marzullo. Cloudy skies tonight, cold overnight low around 33. Tonight, snow showers develop after 9 p.m. Accumulation 1 to 2 inches by dawn with an overnight low around 27. Could be a dicey commute tomorrow morning with that accumulation. Got morning snow showers tomorrow, otherwise mainly cloudy to start the weekend in the afternoon. Tomorrow's high around 32. Currently 26 degrees at the big one, 700 WLW. The post office. The post office continues to struggle. Post office is in the red and has been in the red for the longest time. The good thing is they're considering closing more and more postal locations, combining some, doing what they can to get back into the black. Doing what they can. Looks like they're going to make some changes here locally as well. There's going to be a handful of local post offices that are going to close. This is a study. This is the result of a study that started in 2009. The U.S. Postal Service said that they're going to have to scale this back because they are billions into the red. 43 billion pieces of mail, fewer pieces of mail do they send every year now. In the past 5 years, they've seen a decline of 43.1 billion pieces of mail. So that's less money they're taking in. Now, here's the thing. The post office is basically self-funded at this point. Basically. In other words, it's not we spend a bunch of money in taxes that go to the energy department or someplace else. They are self-funded because they sell stamps and the postage for all the packages, and they'll also sell other things in the little stores there, and you get the collector's stamps, and all of those things they do put money to the bottom line so you and I don't have to use our tax dollars for it. And I love to hear people say how wonderful the post office is. I have a friend who is very different in his thinking than me, and he used to sing the praises of the post office, and he said something amazing to me one day. He said, Doc, think about it. He said, think about what you can do for 40, whatever cents it was at the time. For 40 cents or whatever the amount of postage was at the time. He said, you can send a letter anywhere in the world. Isn't that amazing? For just that little amount of money, they will physically pick up that letter and deliver it anywhere. And he said, that is success. That's amazing they can do that. And I pointed out to him, they're not doing it for that little bit of money. What do you mean? I said, they're hemorrhaging money. They can't do it for that little bit of money. That's the point. They're not doing it for that little bit of money. They keep racking up debt. The reason I said they are basically self-funded, because in the past they were not always self-funded. We have given them money. Since the 80s, we've basically allowed them, they've basically stood on their own feet with different things that they make money on. But we've propped them up in the past. And with this gargantuan debt looming, and they start cutting post offices, they start cutting these things back, are we going to allow them to run at that debt level? If they don't dig themselves out, they don't come up with a plan to cut expenses and also raise some more revenue to get back in the black, will we allow them to fail? Of course not. If it got bad enough, even though they're self-funded, somebody's going to go ahead and put some money their way to take care of it. We also have to pay for the retirement of those federal employees. They're also part of the system there. It's time now that we start looking at the post office and saying one of two things. Either you truly become self-funded. In other words, guarantees that we will not have to give them any more money. Make sure that you're always running in the black, and that even the retirement and the smallest of things when it comes to postal employees are completely self-funded by the post office. Or let's start changing that thing. Let's go ahead and scale it all back. And don't give me that it's in the Constitution, because it isn't. Postal routes are in the Constitution. We could still provide for those things. It's time it needs to go away. The post office is a dinosaur. It's gone. It's done. You send more emails probably in a day or two now than maybe all the mail you've ever sent. Unless you're somebody that sends out hundreds of Christmas cards a year. I answer more emails in a couple of hours than I probably have sent letters in my entire life, because I go through hundreds and hundreds a day. Let's go ahead and get rid of that thing. Part of the problem with the post office, even if it is completely self-funded, it's actually creating competition that is supported by the government. They're taking competition or creating competition for those that are not, the private sector ones. Let's go ahead and let the private sector do it. Let's go ahead and let UPS do it. Let's go ahead and let FedEx do it. Doc Thompson, 700 WL. All right, we had the webcam on for the Reds Caravan when they were in here. This is very important information for you. A very important programming note for you. That webcam is going to be on again today at 12:33. The reason it's so important, Willie's guest, the policewomen of Cincinnati. The show, they're going to be in here, and you'll get a chance to take a little peek at them in the studio with Willie. That's at 12:33 today on 700 WLW. Just go to the website, and you will see the information prominently displayed. You've got the U.S. Postal Service going to close 5 locations here in the area. You got Blue Ash, the East End, Madisonville, Newtown, and Northside as part of their national cost-cutting efforts. I say good. It's time. Close them all up. It's time we all find our own methods of communicating. We have almost limitless ones now. We carry cell phones around. We have the internet. We have texting. We have video conferencing. We have phone calls. We have all kinds of things. Almost limitless. Almost too many. Don on a cell phone. You're on 700 WLW.
How you doing, Doc?
How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for taking my call. You're a little off base on this, and I'll tell you why. I work for a subcontractor for the post office. Okay. It's a good thing that they're doing some of this cost cutting because there is some overhead there that corporate fat that can go bye-bye. Just like any place else you look at. But the reason you can't get rid of it, not everybody has access to all that technology you was just referring to. There's still a lot of people in this country that don't have a computer and don't have cell phones because cell phones don't cover the areas they're in.
So they can go get it, Don.
No, they can't.
Why can't they?
Why would you get a cell phone when it doesn't have coverage?
Wait a minute. Why? You can move.
That's ridiculous.
No, it is not, Don. Don, we all have advantages and disadvantages to where we live. If you don't like that you don't get enough sunshine or you don't like the snow, then move to Florida.
Think about what you just said.
Don, wait a minute. Should the government import sunshine here?
All right, let me put the shoe on the other foot. What if the place I'm living at is out in the country and I'm producing food? I'm a farmer. But because of where my farm is located, there are no cell towers. I'm supposed to quit farming and move so I can have a freaking cell phone?
Don, you can buy a satellite cell phone?
Again, excess expense that you don't need.
It's an excess expense, though, that I should pick up by paying potentially for a future bailout, A, of the post office, and B, paying for federal benefits.
No. First off, you're not paying for the benefits, all right? That's a misnomer.
No, it is not.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. First off, you said it yourself, the post office is self-sufficient.
No. I said it is mainly self-sufficient. They have not always been, number one. Number two, they will not allow the post office to fail if they don't get their act together. Number three, we do pay to prop up the federal benefits for those retirees. And four, it still creates competition that the government is controlling for those private companies that are out there doing battle.
If that was the case, then UPS, DHL, FedEx, and the rest of them wouldn't exist. If they could,
No. They do exist in spite of those things, and they're certainly not able to deliver first-class mail, which I would like them to have the opportunity to do.
UPS, FedEx, and the rest of them will not go to every address and every location in the country.
No. You know what, Don? Somebody would and will for enough money.
They won't, Doc. I'm from Chicago.
Don, if you can tell me any address in America and you give me enough money and I will deliver it for you.
I can show you addresses in Chicago where you wouldn't dare step foot in.
Don, if you give me enough money, I will deliver it for you.
DS will not go to certain...
Don, you're missing the point. If you give me enough money, I will make that deal with you.
So I'm trying to tell you, there are addresses in Chicago, within the city limits, several of which are within less than a mile of UPS's main terminal in downtown Chicago.
Don, first of all, that is one company, number one. Number two, I am telling you, Doc Thompson Express, you give me any address, I'm going to charge you accordingly. It may cost you $25 billion, but I will deliver it.
There is nothing that you need to deliver that's worth $25 million.
Well, there you go. Then it's ridiculous, and you don't need to do it. You can do it yourself then.
But if it's for 41 cents or 47 cents, it's a whole different ballgame. You're talking volume. It's one of the only methods that you can reach every single citizen.
So you like the idea that it's in volume. Therefore, if my letter is only going across town, that I still pay that 42-cent rate, and yours is going around the world. That's fair to you.
It balances out.
It balances out, even though mine should be, if it was in the private sector, only costing 10 cents. But I'm paying for yours in the bulk volume. You think that's a good plan?
I think in the overall scheme of things, yes, and I'll tell you why.
Well, good. I'm glad you like paying for other people. I don't.
Well, the thing is, Doc, is, again, you're talking about paying for other people. All right? Here's the thing. When you make a contract with somebody, all right, specifically the retirees, all right, they did their part. They served their time. They paid in what they were supposed to pay in for their retirement. And they were guaranteed X amount of dollars at that retirement. Now to come along 5 years, or 5 years even, after they retired and say, hey, guess what, the economy changed. That's not their problem. Don, you make a contract with somebody, you have to live up to
Don,
it.
I'm not talking about breaking contracts with people we have. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm not saying break those. I'm saying you go ahead and honor the contracts you've made, and let's make changes for the future beyond those contracts.
Well, that's what they're doing now. That's part of this whole cost-cutting move.
No, I know that, Don, but I'm saying in general, whether it's Social Security, whether it's this, that, or the other, and let's be smarter about the contracts we make in the future. So if you've got a new contract deal that you're working on right now, or one you're preparing for in another year, two, whatever, let's be smart and realize that those contracts don't always end up working. At Missy in Milford, you're on 700 WLW.
Hi, Doc. I always enjoy your conversation. So stimulating.
Thank you, ma'am.
Listen,
I appreciate it.
I just wanted to tell you from one point of view, in my point of view, I don't own a computer. I have tried it at the library. I always need some assistance. And that's why I do still write long letters to friends of mine that live in Australia. It costs me $1.10. I don't care. Because $1.10 go all the way over there is a lot cheaper writing than it is getting on Qantas or Air New Zealand.
True.
So I don't mind, having 44 cents for a letter that can go from Cincinnati, Ohio to New York or San Francisco. And lots of people like me do not want a computer, do not like computers because the one thing is the identity theft.
Well, you don't have to have a computer. Under my plan, if you get rid of the post office, you still have options for paying for those things to be delivered.
If we get rid of the post office, who else is going to send a letter?
Well, whoever
for that amount of money.
Well, for that amount of money, no. But why shouldn't you pay for it? And you don't know. First of all, maybe somebody would find a way to do it efficiently.
Well, that's all hope for the best.
Well,
but
yeah, that's what it is. I mean, Missy, we really have to. We're in an age now. We've got to take steps, and I'm not talking about just with technology. I'm talking about the way we think of these things. The reason people are so locked into the post office is because I grew up with the post office. I'm 117 years age, and the post office has always been there. Come on, let's look beyond it and realize the truths that I'm telling you. It has been funded in the past. If it doesn't correct itself, those unions are not going to allow it to fail, and we are going to have to bail them out. Hell, we bailed out private companies. Why wouldn't we end up bailing out a quasi-government agency? Bailed out Fannie and Freddie, still to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. And we do spend money when it comes to those retirees. And the post office creates competition that is run and regulated by the federal government unnecessarily for a private industry that could be booming right now and creating jobs. Can we move beyond I grew up with the post office and start looking at it from a practical matter? Really? You go into the post office, how's that service? And how's that service versus the UPS or others? Plenty of good experiences at the post office, and I have plenty of bad experiences at the post office. I've seen lines out the door with 43 people there holding heavy packages, and you got one person standing there and 3 other ones standing in the back BSing. Sometimes it's good. You get that same experience at UPS or FedEx, you tell them, pound salt, I'm going to your competitor. Let's create some competition for them there by making sure they compete with the private sector by being private. It's Doc Thompson, 700 WLW. Sherry Rowland, our promotions director here at 700 WLW, agrees with me. It's time the post office needs to limit their service. She can get her pornography online now. She no longer needs it mailed to her. It's perfect. You get it online, right? You've made the move already, the transition? No. She just does the erotic phone calls now. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. I did a admittedly very unscientific study last year. Over the course of a couple of months, I counted each and every piece of mail that I got. I counted it all. It was under 6% of the mail I actually needed. And the rest, garbage. And that's not to say I didn't get a lot of mail. I got a ton of mail in that. All garbage. Junk mail, stuff I didn't want, stuff I didn't sign up for, and stuff I don't need. Under 6%. And half of that I could have actually gotten rid of. It was just stuff I hadn't transitioned to online at that point. Well, like my cell phone bill, there's a couple pieces of mail that I just hadn't transferred over to online. I could have. Some of it I already have now, since then. I just hadn't made the move at that point. How much of the mail you get do you really need? So how about this? Can we knock mail service down? If the post office has to stay and they're in the red, how about this? How about you knock it down to a day a week? I don't want to get rid of just Saturday. I want to get rid of all but Saturday. How about that? What are you waiting for that you can't wait 5 days? If it's that important, have FedEx deliver it. Get it online. What are you waiting for that you can't? Doc, you don't understand. I'm 147 years old, and that's all I have to look forward to. That postman is 5 minutes late today. He's usually here by 12:20. Where is he? Postman's late. Pacing back and forth in front of the window, pulling the curtains back, seeing if he's coming down the street. That's all it is. There's nothing to look forward to. Or how about this? How about we stop door-to-door delivery? How about you just put up a big rack of mailboxes down at the end of the drive and you pick them up? Then they wouldn't have to do door-to-door delivery. More efficient. Have you noticed they've gotten rid of all the big blue mailboxes at the end of streets? Think about that. You no longer see those. When I was a kid, every street corner had one. Every rural like suburban and urban street corner. Big blue post office. Gone now. Those things are done. You still see some of them. Not like you did. Got David Coleraine. You're on 700 WLW.
Yeah, Doc. I spent about 12 years working for the Postal Service, and I could tell you a couple of things that would really help them out financially.
Yes, sir. What? Give us some hint.
Completely top heavy. I mean, way too many supervisors.
I have heard this from current postal employees and past ones in the past saying that
I was here within the last 5 years. We would go to the street. You know, there's 30, 40 carriers in an office. We would go to the street, and there would be 5 or 6 clerks left in the building, and there would be 4 or 5 supervisors as well.
Oh, one for each clerk. Perfect.
About that. And then as far as getting rid of delivery, it should be Saturday delivery that goes. They can't get rid of a weekday delivery. It would kill them because nobody would use them anymore, and there's a lot of businesses that do rely on the Postal Service to deliver mail.
Yeah, but they could transition to a private service then.
The private service isn't going to be able to do what the post office does. They're for that price, and they don't have any interest. As a matter of fact, the UPS, I don't know that they still do, but at one time, the UPS was handing off a lot of the small letter-sized mail and things like that to the Postal Service because they didn't want to deal with it because they couldn't make any money on it.
Well, I guarantee you, David, if the U.S. Postal Service went away, somebody would start a business, and it may not be for 44 cents, but somebody would start a business and would want the business you're talking about that the post office says that the others don't want to deal with right now. And maybe they don't. Tell you what, I would start that business if the post office went away. Absolutely. May not be 44 cents. I'd start a business like that. Jared in Bloomington, you're on 700 WLW.
Hey, Doc.
Yes, sir.
For, probably close to 10 years, and all the different hosts I've ever heard, you're the only one that's ever come on and bashed the Postal Service. I was just kind of curious what your particular bone was with them. So at least the second time I've heard this topic on your show.
I don't think I've talked about it on this show before, but maybe I have.
I've heard it one other time. Used to listen to McConnell almost every day, and he was a great host. And you came along, and I heard that for the first time, and it kind of upset me. And
why does it upset you? Did I say anything that's wrong?
Well, first off, I'm a postal employee.
Well, let's be honest, Jared. That's why you're upset. Because you don't want me talking about getting away from your job instead of thinking a little bit bigger picture here.
Well, you're exactly right on. That's why it upsets me. But you got to look at how they are scaling back, how they have over the past decade. And, for instance, the blue mailboxes you're talking about, you don't see anymore.
It was a great idea because they scaled back. They don't have to pay for them.
Right, and they're taking major steps all across the board, and they are, self-sufficient. The only thing that got them into the red was beginning in 2006, the government mandated them to pre-fund future retiree benefits to the tune of $5.5 billion a year.
Well, and let's apply that to everything else that's going on in government with retiree benefits and things that are unsustainable. We're on the hook for and all of these expenses.
Yeah, well, for the Postal Service to just go away, I think that's very selfish of you to want that. I mean, look at the.
How is it selfish to simply want people to pay for the services they want and get?
Well, I mean, you would be in favor of seeing the unemployment rate go up by that much.
Well, there it is, Jared. There it is. I've heard this argument when it comes to all kinds of things that are government jobs as well. Doc, we can't do away from those. Think about all the people that would lose their job. Well, first of all, some of those jobs, if you're qualified, if you're not, the fatty people that aren't doing your job, if you're a good worker, would be absorbed or picked up by other people. Number two, do you really want to continue with agencies, systems, policies, or companies that shouldn't exist any longer, that are not sustainable, as evident as the post office is in the red, just for the sake of creating jobs? How is that a good idea? Let the strong survive. It's Doc Thompson, 700 WL. You want to know how ridiculous the post office is? This is how ridiculous they are. They have a monopoly on delivering these pieces of mail. Certain types of mail, they have a complete government-sponsored, backed monopoly that a lot of really old people right now listen and are like, right on, Doc, keep the post office. They are a monopoly, but still, in order to get people to buy the little extra stamps and whatever, have to advertise. You've got a monopoly, and you have to advertise. Well, they sponsor the United States Olympics team. Come in and get your stamps, your collectible stamps. That's right, they sponsored Lance Armstrong. You're a monopoly? What is wrong with you? It is not run well. You got the union involvement in it as well. Hey, how come the postmen, how come they don't wear uniforms anymore? Oh, I've seen some of them in it. When I was a kid, you went into the post office, you saw the guy come into your house, and they had uniforms on. Now I go into the post office, you got somebody with an untucked T-shirt that's dirty walking around yelling at somebody else that looks even worse. That's what you see at the post office. It is a model of efficiency, eh? You really think it's that wonderful? Come on. And for the people that are that upset, like the ones that, Doc, you're just a postal hater. It's because it's your job. I'm not criticizing you. You might be a great worker. You might do a great job. But it's a model that just doesn't work. Time to go. Time to move on.